on a sweltering Texas afternoon, one of the most recognizable men in the world, Elon Musk, stepped quietly into a dusty roadside diner just outside Amarillo. No bodyguards, no fanfare, no futuristic entourage. Just a man in jeans, a black Tesla t-shirt, and a bright red Make America Great Again hat. To him, it was just another stop on a long, unremarkable road. But no one inside that diner, not even Elon himself, could have predicted that a simple piece of cloth on his head would ignite tension, spark a fierce conversation, and lead to something completely unexpected. The diner didn't look like much. Its flickering neon sign barely lit the front window, and the building itself looked like it hadn't changed in 30 years. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of sizzling bacon and sweet maple syrup. Locals chatted quietly over chipped mugs of coffee. Truckers leaned back in their booths, soaking in the silence. It was the kind of place that offered peace to people just passing through. Elon's entrance barely drew attention. He didn't come looking for it. The MAGA hat, so often a political lightning rod, meant little to him in that moment. It had been a gift from a retired engineer he'd met at a tech summit months ago. They had talked about hard work, legacy, and building something better than what you found. The hat had sat in the back seat of Elon's truck ever since. Today, it just happened to be the closest thing to shield him from the brutal Texas sun. But in a place like Amarillo, sometimes a hat isn't just a hat. He slid into a corner booth, his back against the wall, and ordered waffles and coffee from a tired-looking waitress who barely batted an eye. Elon wasn't there to stir anything up. He simply wanted a quiet meal. And then the bell over the door jingled. 6 men entered the diner like a gust of wind. Leather jackets covered in patches. Heavy boots thudding against the tile. Their laughter was loud, their presence undeniable. They were bikers, not just in look but in attitude. Men who'd lived on the road, who'd seen too much and trusted too little. At the front of the pack was a broad-shouldered man with silver in his beard and steel in his eyes. His jacket bore the name Bull stitched across the back. And when Bull spotted the red hat in the far booth, his laughter stopped cold. He stared. The grin vanished, and the room changed. "You look a little lost, Hollywood," Bull called out, his voice slicing through the low hum of diner conversation like a blade. The other bikers chuckled, but it wasn't the kind of laughter that came from humor. It was sharper, heavier, the kind that hinted at a challenge. Forks paused midair. Conversations died in throats. Even a waitress froze. But Elon didn't flinch. He looked up from his coffee with a calm, curious expression. "Hollywood?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "Not quite." Bull stepped forward. Heavy boots on linoleum. Every step shrinking the room. And that was the moment everything began to shift. Not into chaos, not into violence, but into something no one in that diner had expected. Bull's boots hit the floor like war drums as he approached the booth. The air inside the diner turned thick, not just with heat, but with something unspoken. The kind of tension that turns heads, quiets voices, and makes strangers hold their breath. Bull stood tall, shadows spilling over the corner booth where Elon sat. His arms crossed, his jaw locked tight. That red hat seemed to glow like a warning sign beneath the flickering diner lights. "You sure about wearing that?" Bull asked, his voice low but loaded with grit. "Because where I come from, that hat says a lot." Elon set his coffee down, hands steady. He didn't look away. "Sometimes," he replied evenly, "a hat is just a hat." A silence rippled across the room. No one moved. No one chewed. Even the fan above the counter seemed to slow its spin. But Bull leaned in closer, his leather creaking as he rested both hands on the table. "Not around here," he said. "Around here, a hat like that walks in before the man does. And it says things a man might not be ready to back up." His words didn't come out as a threat. Not exactly. But they weren't a friendly observation either. Near the counter, the other bikers watched with narrowed eyes. One of them muttered something under his breath, drawing a rumble of amusement from the group. But no one stepped forward. Not yet. They were waiting for Bull, for Elon, for something to break. Elon didn't blink. He leaned back just slightly, elbows relaxed at his sides. "I think it's interesting," he said, "how much meaning people can place on a piece of fabric. You see this hat, and you assume I'm here to stir things up. Why is that? Bull's eyes narrowed. Because it's a symbol, he shot back. People wear that to pick a side. So which side are you on, Mr. Big Shot? From behind the counter, a man slid his plate away and shook his head. This is exactly why I don't stop at places like this anymore, he muttered. Elon turned his gaze back to Bull. Calm, collected. Do you really want to have this conversation here? He asked, gesturing gently to the patrons now staring, wide-eyed, at the unfolding moment. Bull didn't hesitate. Why not? People like you, tech billionaires, don't come out of towns like this unless you're trying to make a point. Elon gave a quiet laugh. I came for waffles, he said. They're actually pretty great. You should try them. The comment wasn't defensive, it was disarming. It landed like a small gust of wind in a heavy room. One of the bikers near the counter actually chuckled. But Bull turned his glare toward the sound, silencing it in an instant. His eyes returned to Elon. You think this is funny? No, Elon replied, voice steady. But I do think misunderstandings usually are. That made Bull pause, just a heartbeat, just enough to notice. There's nothing to misunderstand, he growled. That hat speaks loud enough. Elon nodded slowly, as if choosing his next words carefully. Then maybe, he said, leaning forward slightly, we should talk about what it says to you. Because clearly it means something. For a moment, the diner felt like it held its breath. Even Bull's crew looked toward him, not with the usual expectation of dominance, but with something quieter. Curiosity. Bull didn't answer right away. He looked down at the table, jaw twitching, then finally met Elon's gaze again. You really want to know what it says to me? He asked, his voice rougher now. Less confrontational, more personal. Elon nodded. It says you're either clueless, Bull said, or you're looking for a fight. He pulled a chair from a next table and sat across from Elon without asking. Out here, that hat's got a history, he went on. People wear it to make a statement. And that statement doesn't sit right with everyone. Elon took another sip of his coffee, then set the mug down carefully. That's fair, he said, but maybe it's also worth asking why someone like me might wear it. Or are we more interested in jumping to conclusions? Bull sat back, arms crossed again. But this time, he was listening. The waitress peeked from the kitchen, her eyes darting to Elon's booth, then disappearing again. Another biker, a wiry man with a scar on his cheek, leaned on the counter and raised an eyebrow. All right, he said, his voice skeptical. You've got our attention, Musk. So let's hear it. Why'd you wear the damn thing? The diner was still. No phones, no distractions, just eyes locked on one conversation that had shifted from confrontation to something deeper. Elon looked around, slowly, deliberately, and then, with surprising honesty, he said, because it was a gift. Elon's voice cut through the silence, soft but unwavering. It was a gift, he repeated, from a retired engineer I met at a conference. We talked about work, about legacy, about building something that matters. He gave me this hat as a reminder, not of politics, but of purpose, and I kept it. Bull studied him. His eyes searched Elon's face for signs of sarcasm or spin, but there was none, just calm clarity. And you wore it out here? Why? Bull asked. Elon offered a small, almost apologetic shrug. Honestly, it was sitting in the back seat of my truck. Sun was brutal today. I grabbed the first thing I saw. A few of the bikers exchanged glances, some amused, others still skeptical. Bull leaned in slightly, voice lower now, less about confrontation, more about curiosity. You're telling me you just happened to walk into a place like this, wearing that, and didn't think twice about it? I didn't come here to make a point, Elon replied. But I can see now that maybe I did just by walking through the door. The honesty disarmed Bull in a way that no prepared speech ever could have. Still, he wasn't ready to let it go. You've got to understand, Bull said, tapping a calloused finger against the table. Around here, people don't see that hat as neutral. It doesn't matter who gave it to you. It's a symbol, a dividing line. You wear it, and folks will assume you've picked a side. I get that, Elon said. But isn't it worth asking, why do we assume the worst about people before we've even said a word to them? The words weren't spoken like a challenge. They were more like an invitation. Bull sat back, his leather jacket creaking under the motion. He didn't reply right away. One of the bikers, the man with the red bandana, crossed his arms and nodded toward Elon. "All right then, big shot," he said. "What side are you on?" Elon glanced around the room. His voice remained steady, unhurried. "I stand for moving forward," he said, "for finding common ground, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. I believe people are better than the symbols they wear. I believe that if we stopped talking at each other and started asking questions, we might actually learn something." For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of his words seemed to hang in the air like the smell of bacon and coffee had earlier, heavy, lingering. Bull stared at Elon, eyes sharp but no longer hostile. His voice was quieter now. "You really believe all that?" he asked. Elon nodded without hesitation. "Edo." The man with the scar laughed softly. "You sound like you're trying to sell us something." "I'm not," Elon said, smiling faintly. "But I am building something. And if you're interested, I'd like to show you." Bull's brow lifted slightly. "Show us." "There's a Tesla facility not far from here," Elon said. "We're working on a few things I think you might find interesting. Not just cars, solutions. Ideas that could change how we live, how we move, how we think. I'm not saying they'll solve everything, but it's a start." Bull looked around at his crew. They weren't scoffing. Not anymore. Some of them looked curious. Others cautious. But none of them had that mocking grin from earlier. "And what, exactly, are you offering?" Bull asked. "No pitch," Elon replied. "No cameras. No strings. Just a tour. Come see it for yourselves. Maybe it changes your mind. Maybe it doesn't. But either way, at least we talked." The diner, for all its stillness, felt alive now. Not with noise, but with something deeper, the sense that something real was happening. Something rare. A bridge was being built, not with tools or money, but with conversation. Bull tapped the edge of the table with his thumb. Then finally, he nodded. "Fine," he said. "But if this turns into some kind of PR stunt—" "It won't," Elon said. "Just people, talking, learning." Bull pushed back his chair and stood. "Then lead the way." They left the diner quietly, the bell over the door jingling one last time as 6 bikers followed a man in a red hat toward a waiting Cybertruck. Something had shifted. The confrontation had become a conversation, and what came next would leave them all changed. The sun was beginning its descent behind the wide Texas plains as Elon led the group of bikers across the diner's dusty lot. His Cybertruck, all sharp lines and futuristic sheen, sat parked against a backdrop of rusted pickups and sun-faded motorcycles. It looked like something from another world. One of the bikers, the youngest, with a red bandana tied around his head, let out a low whistle. "That thing really yours?" he asked. "Sure is," Elon replied, sliding a key card from his pocket. With a soft chirp, the truck lit up. The door handles popped out like magic. Bull crossed his arms. "We're not climbing into that spaceship until you tell us what we're getting into." Elon leaned casually against the truck's side. "What you're getting into," he said, "is an idea, a possibility, a look at a different kind of future, one that doesn't leave people behind." The group exchanged uncertain glances. Suspicion still lingered, but so did curiosity. Bull gave a slight nod. "All right, show us." They climbed into the Cybertruck, leather jackets squeaking against synthetic seats, the interior spacious but unfamiliar. As Elon pulled out onto the road, the truck moved with silent precision, gliding over the old asphalt like a ship cutting through calm waters. "You know," Elon began, "most people think Tesla is about fancy cars for rich folks. And, yeah, that's how it started. But what we're working on now, it's a lot bigger than that." The bikers listened quietly. No interruptions. No snide remarks. "It's about energy. About resilience," he continued. "It's about figuring out how to keep the lights on when the grid fails. How to move people without polluting the air their kids breathe. How to create jobs that don't disappear with the next wave of automation." As the truck sped down the highway, the landscape shifted from open country to sleek infrastructure. In the distance, a gleaming structure appeared, glass and steel catching the final light of day. It looked like it belonged in a sci-fi film, not West Texas. Elon pulled into the lot and parked near the front entrance. "This," he said, stepping out, is where the future's being built. The bikers followed him, boots clicking against smooth concrete. Bull stayed close behind, arms still crossed, but his eyes darted from detail to detail, curious despite himself. Inside, the Tesla facility buzzed with quiet energy. Automated arms danced across assembly lines. Workers in clean uniforms moved with purpose. Massive displays tracked progress in real time. Battery units, solar panels, electric drive trains. The contrast with the dusty diner couldn't have been sharper. At first, the bikers kept their distance, hanging back, watching. Then the youngest, the one with the red bandana, broke the silence. "This is wild," he murmured, staring at a robotic arm assembling a car chassis with perfect precision. Elon smiled. "It's something, isn't it?" He led them through the production floor, pointing out innovations. More affordable battery tech, solar solutions for off-grid homes, even prototypes for electric motorcycles. He explained without condescension, with the tone of someone who respected not just what he was building, but who he was building it for. "This isn't about making toys for billionaires," he said firmly. "It's about solving real problems, the kind that affect everyone, no matter where they're from or what they believe." Bull had been quiet the entire tour, but now, standing near the final assembly line, he spoke up. "You really believe this makes a difference?" he asked, voice low. "I do," Elon replied without missing a beat. "But it's not just about the machines. It's about the mindset, about daring to imagine something better and doing the work to make it real." Bull looked around the facility one more time. His eyes landed on a wall filled with handwritten messages from Tesla employees. Dreams, goals, notes to the future. It made him pause. "I've spent my life fixing things," he said quietly. "Engines, machines, old stuff mostly. Never thought much about what comes next. Just how to keep what we've got running." "That's important," Elon said. "Without people like you, none of this exists. The future doesn't work if we forget how we got here." For a long moment, no one said anything. Then, slowly, Bull extended a hand. "You're not Guy Musk," he said, "but I respect what you're doing." Elon shook his hand firmly. "And I respect that you came." The group headed back to the truck. The mood changed, lighter, quieter. Conversation sparked now, not tension. Laughter returned in small, cautious bursts. As they rolled back into the diner's lot, the night had fully settled. The building looked smaller now, the world outside the Tesla facility somehow less vast. The bikers stood in a loose circle beside their bikes, quieter than before, thoughtful. Elon leaned against his truck, eyes on the stars. "I've been to a lot of places," he said softly. "Met a lot of people. But today reminded me why these conversations matter. Not just about tech, about where we're going as people." Bull nodded once, slowly. "You made me think," he admitted. "That doesn't happen often." Elon smiled. "Thinking's the first step," he said. "Action comes next." The red bandana biker tilted his head. "You really think this tech stuff can fix the world?" Elon's face grew serious. "Technology is just a tool," he said. "It can build walls, or it can build bridges. We choose which." The engines roared to life. One by one, the bikers mounted their bikes and rode off into the Texas night. Bull was the last to leave. He gave Elon a final nod, not of agreement, but of respect. And then he was gone. Elon watched the taillights fade, then slid behind the wheel of the Cybertruck. He stared out at the empty road, took a breath, and smiled. Progress, he knew, wasn't just steel and code. Sometimes it started with a conversation in a dusty little diner.